We have this question in from Laszlo. He writes, what is your view on the destruction, or at least the dilution, of the traditional Western culture through the forceful introduction of Islamic refugees? And what consequences do you foresee? Are we doomed to have a major clash of cultures between the traditional Christian Western culture on one side and the Islamic culture on the other side? Good question. Clash of cultures. No, that doesn't sound quite right. Clash of civilizations. That's right. Where did I hear that? 23 years ago. Oh, that's right. Our good friends at the Council on Foreign Relations.
Foreign Affairs. Summer 1993. The Clash of Civilizations? By Samuel P. Huntington. The next pattern of conflict. World politics is entering a new phase, and intellectuals have not hesitated to proliferate visions of what it will be. The end of history. The return of traditional rivalries between nation-states, and the decline of the nation-state from the conflicting pulls of tribalism and globalism, among others. Each of these visions catches aspects of the emerging reality. Yet they all miss a crucial, indeed a central aspect of what global politics is likely to be in the coming years. It is my hypothesis that the fundamental source of conflict in this new world will not be primarily ideological or primarily economic. The great divisions among humankind and the dominating source of conflict will be cultural. Nation-states will remain the most powerful actors in world affairs, but the principal conflicts of global politics will occur between nations and groups of different civilizations. The clash of civilizations will dominate global politics. The fault lines between civilizations will be the battle lines of the future. Conflict between civilizations will be the latest phase in the evolution of conflict in the modern world.
That's right. Foreign Affairs, the journal of the Council on Foreign Relations, published Samuel P. Huntington's landmark essay in 1993, 23 years ago, The Clash of Civilizations, developed into a book in 1996, which became one of the key filters, key ways that foreign policy planners have been looking at the world in the post-Cold War era, well, for the last couple of decades. And yes, once again, the Council on Foreign Relations, and just to put it in perspective, who's Samuel P. Huntington? Not only was he an insider in the National Security Council in the Carter administration, but he made his name back in the 1960s, I think 68, writing, again, in Foreign Affairs for the CFR, with a wonderful strategy for isolating the Viet Cong in South Vietnam by getting the South Vietnamese rural population into the cities. And how do you drive them into the cities? Carpet bombing and defoliating the countryside. Oh, napalm. I love the smell of napalm in the morning, wrote Samuel P. Huntington in the 60s, and he became... well, that set him on his path to academic superstardom, and the culmination of it was The Clash of Civilizations. Yes, how amazingly predictive that narrative has become. Or is it one of those self-fulfilling prophecies? My money is on the latter. We have to understand what is happening now with the craziness, with all these terror attacks and everything. We have to understand this as part of an engineered conflict. This conflict has been engineered. Really, you can look for at least a century of history, and you can look at the creation of radicalized Islamic groups, the fostering, the funding, the protection, the arming, the training of these groups. Not just the famous example or the infamous example that I'm sure we all know by now, that Osama bin Laden was the CIA's golden boy back in Afghanistan in the 80s when he was fighting those damn Ruskies. It's not just that. The history is much wider, broader, deeper than that. Go look at the origins of the Muslim Brotherhood. Go look at the creation of Hezbollah. Go look at the creation, of course, of Al-Qaeda, ISIS. Again, time and time and time again, the most radicalized elements are being supported, fostered, funded, taken care of, and we see a microcosm of that in the 28 pages which, you know, obviously has its own reservations, but still, that's the idea, that the US government highly in bed with these people who are funding radical terrorism. Again, the terrorists are really the ones in government. So again, we have to understand that. And again, it's not even just the funding of the radical Muslim groups, it's also the destruction of any alternative. Look at Nasserism, and how that was Pan-Arabism, how that was ultimately undermined and destroyed and eradicated, because that is the real threat to the globalists, who of course want the radical Islamic side of this that they can plop into that equation to make a clash of civilizations. Why make a clash of civilizations? It's a further rung up the ladder of centralization. It's not just, you know, principalities, it's not just nation states, now it's entire civilizations are warring with each other. The collective grows larger and larger with each iteration of this dialectic, until eventually you've got the big clash of, you know, whatever two major powers, however that's divided up into whatever kind of regional blocks. And either you have some sort of 1984-ish, you know, war with East Asia. We were never at war with East Asia, in which it's all just, you know, showing games to basically not placate the public, but keep the public in fear, or ultimately the unveiling of the one world government to save us from this, you know, this horrible clash that's taking place. Either way, that is the end goal of this clash of civilizations. So here's the newsflash: all of these terror events and everything have to be seen as engineered products of that clash of civilization that has been engineered into place for a century or more. And until and unless we truly internalize that, then there is no way to win the rigged game. If you take sides in a rigged game, you're gonna lose either way. Or the game is going to play out exactly the way the person who rigged it wants it to play out. And that's, of course, we know where the globalists want to take this. So the way not to play this game is not to give into the collectivism, the collectivization, the subsuming of your identity in some sort of civilization, like because you were born here or because you are this person, that you now subsume the entire, you know, you reflect the identity of an entire civilization, and that is reflected in you. That collective mindset is the basis of the clash of civilizations, and that's the reason they want to get you further ensconced in their system. The way to get out of that, again, bring it down to individuals, individualism, getting away from collectivism. And of course, people are going to come back when you start talking about that with the straw man about, oh, individual isolation, you know, everyone's an island. That doesn't work with modern society. That isn't what individualism means. It means that you do not, there is no utilitarian ethic that says the greater good. There is no subsuming of your identity, who you are as a human being. You specifically are not a civilization. You're not tied into a billion people because of where you were born or anything of that sort. And the quicker we free ourselves from those mental traps, the quicker we get out of the Clash of Civilizations game that they are setting up. It is a rigged game. You lose if you play. I'm going to include some, I mean, there's so much history that has to be understood to understand this, so I'm just going to include a few links to a few of the things that I've done over the years. The Last Word on Terrorism, talking about the destruction of Pan-Arabism and Nasser in particular. I did a Corbett Report radio episode on the Muslim Brotherhood and where they come from. And I'll throw in Know Your Terrorists, Ayman al-Zawahiri from episode 258 to understand again how Al-Qaeda was created, fostered, funded, actively colluded with by the U.S. military intelligence, NATO military and intelligence apparatus. So that's a lot to get through and, you know, a lot to explore. But again, we are best served by knowing history.